All right, what is up, everybody? This is Alex once again for another installment of the EOT News Flash on our Ravnica Allegiance Limited set review. We are on to the red cards, and if you haven't already, go back and check out the black cards, which are already up. Big shout out to Mr. Spellpierce himself, Steven, for jumping on last night with us to help us record those. That part of the review here. Always great to get his opinion about Magic cards. You know, he's one of those really creative minds in Magic where it comes to looking at things from a different perspective, and that's a really great way of learning about how to evaluate cards by having an opinion, outside of your own. So big shout out to him. Looking forward to having him on in the future for more zany content and wacky antics here on the EOT News Flash. So definitely check out the black cards that are already up, as well as the blue and the white cards from the previous night. The pre-release, of course, is this weekend, so I am here to arm you as best I can to get you, into that undefeated bracket. Hopefully, at least you'll be having some fun along the way. But let's not waste any time. We're operating on a 4-point scale, one being the cards that you probably will never play. They're just bottom of the barrel, completely ineffectual. Your twos are going to be more of your filler. That's going to make up most of your deck. Your threes are going to be more powerful spells, creatures, and removal spells typically. Maybe a couple of rares we'll see sneak in there. And your fours are going to be the absolute bombs that will always play in your color. You open a pack for draft, it pulls you into that color, and that's the direction your deck goes. So, and we also will have S for sideboard and B for build around me. There's a couple of those cards in red here in particular. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into it with Act of Treason. This card has literally been printed 4 bazillion times as far as I'm concerned now. 2 in a red sorcery common. Gains control of a target creature until the end of turn. Untap that creature, and it gains haste until the end of turn. I give this one a solid 2 just because it is a good solid card for your aggressive red decks. To get that last point of damage in, your opponent plays a really big creature, and you just say, well, that's great, I'm going to kill you with it. So, pretty impactful. You definitely want to have it in a more aggressive deck, mid-range and control strategies limited in draft. Not where you want to play this card, not where it's at its best. Far better in an aggressive strategy for sure. Next up, we have Amplifier, 2 red creature elemental at rare, 1/1. Get ready for this. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Until your next turn, Amplifier's base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice that card's toughness. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Wow. That's a lot of text for saying not a whole lot about this card, because it's actually not very good. I give this card a 1 simply because 4-mana 1/1s, on their face, are terrible. And you've got to have, some pretty impactful cards in your deck to make this thing even better. The fact that it doesn't get any evasion, trample, menace, anything like that, double strike of any kind is a major knock against this card. Because even if you reveal a 2/2 and it becomes a 5/5, they're just going to block it. And, let's see, so where does the card even go? And then put the revealed cards. Yeah, it just goes to the bottom of your library. It's putting cards that you want to be drawing on the bottom of your library. I cannot think of a world where you want to play this unlimited. So, it has power and toughness greater than 0, which is the only reason I gave it a 1. But beyond that, this card is trash. Do not play Amplifier. Next up, we have Burn Bright, and you certainly will if you cast this at the right time. You have a 2 in a red instant at common. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until the end of turn. This is how the Rakdos decks will finish games. This is how the Gruul decks will finish games. They line up the blockers, and you say go to damage, and they say, hold on, you're dead. Awesome card here. Very, very, mass pump effects for, low to the ground aggro decks are always really good and limited, especially in draft where you can really control the curve a lot better than you would in sealed. But I still think there's some application here in a sealed deck, especially if there's a big board state, you just want to try to push the last points of damage. This might just be the way to do this. I give it a 2.5. Like I said, it's an aggressive card and exactly where you want to be in your Rakdos and Gruul decks. Next up, we have Burning Tree Vandal, 2 and a red human rogue at common, 2/1 with Riot. This is our first Riot card. This is the Gruul mechanic that enters the creature in a battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. So surprisingly, Gruul has the most flexibility in the mechanic. It's do I want to do damage now, or do I want to make more damage later? It's a really cool counterplay effect and lets you really kind of control the tempo of a game. But as Burning Tree Vandal attacks, you may discard a card, and if you do, you draw a card. This is called rummaging in more, slang magic terms here. And I gave this a 2.25. I like it more, obviously, as a 3-2. And just to be able to get that card out of it is actually pretty powerful to ditch excess lands. It's still a good top deck even. Like cards like this that can just, would normally be dead in the late game, to be able to just fire off 2 damage on your opponent and kill them. Awesome card here. So obviously it's an aggressive card. Low to the ground Gruul decks, low to the ground Rakdos decks. That's where you want to be playing this card. But, any red card advantage is always good in my book, especially because it is so hard to come by. And I like the Vandal because it does, just that for you. All right, moving right along. Let's get onto Cavalcade of Calamity. Wow. Just the art in this card is just beyond bonkers. We have spiked, unicycles and whatever the heck this guy in the middle is doing, which probably isn't safe to be shown on the internet, so whatever. 1 in a red enchantment at uncommon. Whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. So, I counted. There are 11 creatures that meet this condition of 1 power or less. Some of them aren't even in red, or black, or green. And some of them have Defender. So I don't know what this card is actually doing for you. Probably not worth playing. I gave it a 0 just because I don't think there's any reason to play this card unless you draft like this wild. I think it's Goblin Gathering, I think is the card that we'll get to here in a little bit. That lets you make lots of goblins for the number of copies of Goblin Gathering you've cast. Like maybe that's how you do this, but beyond that, I have 0 interest in Cavalcade of Calamity. Flat 0 for me. Pass. Next up we have Clamor Shaman, 2 in a red Goblin Shaman and uncommon. It's a 1/1 with Riot, so you get the choice again. +1/+1 counter or haste. And whenever it attacks, target creature your opponent controls can't block this turn. I like this guy quite a bit, actually. I'm typically not a big fan of aggressive strategies. I will make the confession that I've never drafted a Boros deck in Guilds of Ravnica. Never wanted to. Never needed to. And it's just not, really kind of my bread and butter lies when it comes to playing Magic. But this card is still fairly powerful here. Just the ability to keep their biggest guy from blocking, any of your creatures for that matter is really powerful here. And in the right kind of aggressive shell, I definitely think it has a lot of power to it. Being a 3-mana 1/1 is a little dubious, so I think it does need to be played as a 2/2. But maybe if it's, getting that last point of damage through, playing as a 1/1 is actually okay here. Again, not being a completely dead top deck is pretty impactful here. So I give this guy a 2. 2 for me, actually, yeah. Next up, we have Dagger Caster. 3 in a red, 2/3 uncommon, Viashino Rogue. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. So this is actually pretty cool here. This is a great way to enable Spectacle out of the Rakdos cult. And it can kill a couple of creatures. It's going to kill a bunch of spirit tokens as well. So this card's actually pretty impactful. The casting cost is a bit high for its stats, but I think the effect makes up for it. So Dagger Caster gets a 2.25 from me just out of pure flexibility and giving some more range to the Spectacle cards, which at first glance I didn't think would be that good, but cards like this make me think a little bit different. Next up we have Deface, and the art here is just so perfect. A single red mana gets you a sorcery at common, and you can choose one to either destroy an artifact or a creature with Defender. Apparently Wizards has this thing against Defenders nowadays. They keep printing them and they're like, well, we have to find a way to stop them because they're just running amok in Standard, apparently. This card is a sideboard card, plain and simple. There are a handful of artifacts in this set, a couple of them which are quite powerful. One's actually completely immune to this effect, actually, so that's interesting. But anyway, sideboard only. Typically, you won't be playing cards like this, unless your opponent, that the draft that you're sitting in has a really powerful artifact that you need to be aware of. So maybe, but typically cards like this, I am not too high on playing in the main board. Next up, we've got a card that I am convinced is either destined for greatness or absolute failure. There's no middle ground here. This is Electro Dominance, X red instant at rare. It deals X damage to any target, and you may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So obviously this is pretty good, a good fireball effect, especially in instant speed fireball, and it does let you get around the timing of any card. So this effectively gives flash to any spell, be it a sorcery, creature, planeswalker, or whatever. It's pretty powerful and very flexible in that regard, which makes it absolutely fine for limited play. You know, fireballs are fireballs. It's a solid 3 here, obviously, but its impact in older formats like Modern, where all of a sudden you're casting Ancestral Visions for 2 mana effectively. You're casting Living In. You're casting Restore Balance. There's a lot of applications of this card that make it quite dangerous. And I have to wonder if Wizards maybe thought about that and maybe should have tweaked this a little bit. I don't know if it's going to break those older formats. We'll have to see. But as it stands, this is a really good removal spell in red. Very, very powerful. Very easy to first pick. Always make your red decks in your limited pools. Next up, we have the Feral Maca. Finally, a cat that is marginally better than the green one. Oh, no, that was a white cat. Yeah, the white cat. We have a 1 and a red cat common 2/2. Oh, that's it. That's just flavor text right there. Yeah, this is fine. It's a 1.5 for me. It's mediocre filler. I'll play it if I need to fill up, if I need a spot on my curve filled, if I need more 2-drops, but I'll try really hard to find better cards than this. I need some text on my cats. That's just me, though. Next up, we have Flames of the Razeboar. 5 and a red instant at uncommon. Deals 4 damage to a target creature an opponent controls. And then it also deals 2 damage to each other creature that player controls if you control a creature with 4 power or greater. This is obviously at home in a Gruul deck where most of your creatures already are 40/40s. And this is solid removal. Like Electrify out of Amonkhet was first pickable removal, and I think the same holds true here for Flames of the Razeboar. I don't think you necessarily have to have that extra effect go off, and if you do, that's just butter. So awesome. I gave Flames of the Razeboar here a 3. Very powerful card. Next up, we have Gates Ablaze, 2 and a green uncommon sorcery that deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control. I like a variable wrath effect like this. So if you are trying to maneuver the board state such that you will kill your opponent's creatures and not yours, this is a pretty cool way to do that by having the number of gates that you want to have in play do what you need them to do. So cards like this are always really cool and very impactful. It's a bit more of a build around me because you do want to have a number of gates to make sure that you're able to cast this for the level that you want it at. But once you do, this is a solid 2.5 for me. Wraths, even damage-based wraths, are always powerful and limited in one way or another. So pretty cool card here. Like it a lot. Next up, we've got the Gore Clan Wrecker. 3 and a red for a human warrior at common, has Riot and Menace, and it's a 2/2. I would not play this as a 2/2 for 4, even unless my opponent's literally dead. If I can attack and just kill them. That's the only time I'd do this. This needs to be a hill giant at minimum, 4 mana 3/3 obviously. And then, the Menace is actually quite good. Menace is, evasive abilities like this that force them to commit more blockers will always be powerful and limited, and this is a really powerful effect, especially if I have a good pump spell for it. But yeah, as a 2/2, this doesn't impress me in the slightest. Needs to be a 3/3 before you can start making any impact with it. So I gave our record buddy here a 2.25. Next up, we have Goblin Gathering. So this goes back to that Cavalcade card, which I think might be the only way that has any worth in your deck. So Goblin Gathering is a 2 and a red sorcery at common that creates a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to 2 plus the number of cards named Goblin Gathering in your graveyard. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It scales up from there. You get the picture here. So it's a pretty wild card here. Casting this followed by another one. It's 2, 3, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It gets out of control rather quickly here. And scales up exponentially in that regard. But, they're still 1/1s. They're decent chump blockers. I don't know what you're doing with all of them. Again, this isn't a kind of card I'm interested in, but the more aggressive decks will probably want this in some numbers just to have enough creatures to keep turning sideways at all times, triggering Spectacle. But yeah, this card is, it's a 2 for me. It's good filler, It's effective, Raise the Alarm is good. Loyal Servant, Loyal Companions from Celestia was, makes effectively some more cards to this, but those had lifelink, so it's a lot weaker than other effects like this. But being able to scale up makes it quite interesting. So I don't know where this is going to come out on top at, but I'm not a fan of it personally. Next up, we have Gravelhide Goblin. 1 in a red, 2/1 Goblin Shaman, common, 3 in a green, lets you give it +2/+2 until the end of turn. I give this a 1.5 just because 4 mana is a lot to make a 4/3. And in some cases, that's not going to be enough to even punch through some other things, or it might just die flat out. Something that already has 3 power. A good mana sink is always powerful limited, but you don't want it to be the onboard trick that you're trying to play to, just because they'll always put their weakest creature in front of it and force you to commit the mana to it. So really weak filler here. I'm not a big fan of this card at all. Give it a 1.5. Next up, we have the Immolation Shaman. 1 in a red, via Shino Shaman at rare. It's a 1/3, and whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, so it's not producing mana, Immolation Shaman deals 1 damage to that player. You can also pay 3 red and give it +3/+3 and menace until the end of turn. Now that's a good mana sink. This is powerful stuff here. A lot of cards in Limited are good because they have activated abilities, and it's really going to make your opponent think twice about activating those, with reckless abandon that they might, if they're depending on an artifact or a creature to really carry them to victory. So this is a really powerful card for that, and there's a really punishing effect. And I like just being able to give it, that effect towards the end of the game. And a 4/6, that's huge. It's going to have a hard time blocking, hard time killing it. Via the Immolation Shaman here, gets a solid 2.5 from me. It might be a little bit better than that. I want to play with this card first, though. Next up, we've got Light Up the Stage. The very first Spectacle card we got to see originally revealed it was the F&M promo version, so we didn't know what Spectacle did at the time. So for 2 in a red at sorcery, uncommon, you exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until the end of your turn, you may pay those, or you may play those cards, and that's obviously Spectacle is you may cast it for the red mana that it costs if an opponent lost life this turn. So as long as you don't damage them in your turn, you can exile, you can play it for 1 red, which is really powerful here. So I gave it a 2.5 just because the aggressive red decks will really want to take advantage of this. For one, there's no stipulation that you are having to cast. You are playing spells and you're playing cards. You don't cast lands, you play lands, which allows you to hit lands off of this, especially if you're in a lighter, aggressive deck that has, a few less lands than, your normal 17 land deck might actually have. This can be a really powerful effect here to get a bunch of free cards in the late game and possibly burn your opponent out. Really powerful stuff here. 2.5 for me. Could even see a little bit of standard play too. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. Next up, we have Mirror March. I thought this was Mirror Match originally, which I thought would have been a lot better, but, whatever. 5 in a red enchantment. Rare, whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip that you won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste, and then exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So if you are at all mathematically inclined, probability specifically, you know that a coin flip is literally a 50-50 shot. And by pure mathematics, you will get 1 off of this. That is your highest probability is to get 1 off of this. Frank Karsten over on Channel Fireball wrote an article, I think today actually, that breaks down the math on this thing. And he's like, yeah, you'll get 1 and only 1. To get any more than that is absolutely absurd. So don't even go that direction. I give it a flat out 0. It doesn't do anything. And yeah, cool art though. Next up we have the Rix Madi Reveler. This chick is something else. 1 in a red at rare, Human Shaman 2/2, spectacles for 2 black red, so it's actually increasing its cost as opposed to usually decreasing the cost. But the benefit is huge. As she enters the battlefield, discard a card and then draw a card. If you play it for its spectacle cost, though, you discard your hand and draw 3. So it's a Bedlam Reveler effect, which is really kind of cool here. So if you're hellbent, play it, go for it. Awesome, awesome card here. I gave the Reveler here a 2.5. Like I said already, card draw and card advantage in red is so rare to come by, and actual card advantage, not having to discard and then draw, or draw discard like Faithless Looting. This is raw card advantage right here if you have things set up correctly. Very, very powerful. 2.5 for me. Next up we have Rubble Reading. 3 in a red, sorcery at uncommon, destroys target land and you scry 2. There are no lands in this set that are worth blowing up in limited. Just don't. 0. Sorry. Why even waste my time on that card? We can talk about better cards, like Rebel Belt Recluse. 4 in a red, common Ogre Berserker, 6/5. That has to attack each turn if able. Wow. If you need the higher end curve filler in your red deck, if you're playing like a Gruul deck or even like a Rakdos deck that just needs a high end, this is your high end right here. And especially a common here, you've got room for 1 in your deck at least if you're playing an aggressive red deck. At least 1. Probably no more than that. And just be able to turn sideways for 6 every single turn. This will eventually break through, I think, and be quite powerful. So I like this guy a lot for what he does. He's definitely filler, but solid filler at that. Next up we have Rumbling Ruin. 5 in a red, uncommon elemental, 6/6. When it enters battlefield, count the number of +1/+1 counters on creatures you control. So just the counters themselves, not the number of creatures that have counters on them. Creatures your opponents control with power less than or equal to that number can't block this turn. So this is your Riot payoff. You keep playing playing your Riot spells, your spells that give +1/+1 counters out of green, and then drop this thing, and most likely your opponent will die immediately. This is a really powerful card, a great payoff at uncommon. Really nice to see that cards like this, which pay off for a strategy that they're trying to push here with a mechanic like Riot, aren't being locked out at rare and mythic. I like seeing cards like this. This is a great teaching tool to show newer players to look for, synergy, and not have to worry about, did I draft the mythic rare that deals with this mechanic? Really cool decision on Wizards to make this card. Really powerful here. I give it a 2.5 for sure. A little expensive, but when it goes off, it's done. Next up, we have Scorchmark. 1 in a red, common instant that deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Apparently, Magma Spray is too good for standard now, too. Wow. Think about that. But yeah, Scorchmark is perfectly playable. There's enough 2-power creatures in this, or 2 toughness creatures in this set that are, going to be running around. It's great that it messes with Afterlife, and I almost have to think that they made this instead of Magma Spray just so that it wouldn't completely hose Afterlife, because not many of the Afterlife creatures have an abundance of toughness that would survive the 2 damage from Scorchmark here. So that might be why they had to kind of, alter things just a little bit. So still a powerful removal spell here. Solid 2.25 for me. We'll pick off a lot of smaller creatures or finish off a larger one after combat. Here's Big Daddy, though. The Skargan Hellkite. I love Hellkite. It's just so evocative. For 3 red, you get a Mythic Dragon. 4/4 with Riot. So again, +1/+1 counter or haste. It has flying, and you can pay 3 in a red. And the Skargan Hellkite deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. And you can activate this ability only if it has a +1/+1 counter. Unfortunately, this isn't going to lock itself out if you didn't choose that mode on Riot, because you do have the ability to put +1/+1 counters on it with other methods. So don't worry about saying, only half of my card works right now. Even then, this card is just berserk powerful. Solid 4 for me. Just the ability to effectively turn this into a machine gun to kill, your opponent, their creatures, everything they play will die to this dragon eventually, including your opponent. Really powerful card here. What more can I say? Solid 4. Absolutely insane Magic card. Always good to see a good Mythic Dragon come back to Magic here. All right, on to our last few red cards here. Appreciate you guys hanging around with me watching all this. Skewer the Critics is a 2-red sorcery at common, spectacle for 1 red that deals 3 damage to any targets. All of a sudden, mono red burn is like, I think they're at 36 bolts now. Like, they're literally just able to play 1 mana 3 damage to any creature or target. It's absolutely ridiculous. Here, more than likely, like, this is absolutely playable. This is a 2.5 flat out. Even at 3 mana, the damage is effective. Even just as soon as it gets to 1 mana, the card is absurd. In terms of the lightning bolt or lava spike or rift bolt, whatever you want to call it at this point, this card is just so powerful and so pushed in just the right ways. This will see modern burn play. This will see play in Pauper. Card is just good. Next up, we have the Smelt Ward Ignis. 1 in a red, uncommon elemental 2/1. You may pay 2 in a red to sacrifice Smelt Ward Ignis and gain control of target creature with power 3 or less until the end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until the end of turn. Activate it only at any time you could cast a sorcery. I do not like cards like this that have a conditional threaten effect on them. So rare will it be advantageous to steal something. Obviously it's cool you can activate it immediately. You paid 5 mana for a threat effect on a 3-power creature. If it's their last blocker, maybe, but it's still not super excited about cards like this. Not sure why it has to be an uncommon. But beggars can't be choosers. Not a really big fan of this card as well. Weak power. The power toughness ratio is really low as well. Just not the kind of card I'm interested in playing really at all here. That being said, this next guy, the Spear Spewer. What a name. Single red mana gets you a common Goblin Warrior, 0/2 with Defender. You may tap it and deal 1 damage to each player. This is an excellent spectacle enabler here. Super good at that, in particular. And, if you're maybe playing a longer game against, if you're playing like Gruul or a more controlling Rakdos, like with lots of removal, this is how you might just win the game. Because eventually they'll have to go, all right, fine, I guess I'm going to Scorch Market or, kill it somehow. And that's really embarrassing. But, if you're playing a low to the ground aggressive deck that has a lot of spectacle cards in it, or just, a bunch of cards with Riot that are cheap, that are only getting a lot of damage, this is a great way to finish off your opponent. So not a bad card at all here. I give it a 2.5 just because of all the flexibility it has. Don't be surprised if you're staring this thing down at your pre-release and you have to all of a sudden go, that's going to kill me, because it just might. Next up, we have the Spike Wheel Acrobat. And I don't know how long it takes to master the Spike Wheel, and I'm not about to find out myself. But this is a 3 in a red human rogue at common, 5/2, with spectacle for 2 in a red. Only the most aggressive red decks will want to play this. A 4 mana 5/2 is not a very good rate. And even at 3 mana, this is going to trade down with so many creatures that are just, that outclass it by and large. But, if you do have a way to give it first strike or leave it to survive combat, 5 damage is a lot, obviously. So this might do some damage, but this is not something that I'm going to be picking all that highly. If I need a playable, it might make the cut in some cases, but definitely not an exciting card to play at all. And on to our last 2 red cards. The home stretch is here. We got a little first strike action off of Storm Strike, a single red instant at common. Gives a creature +1/+0 on first strike until the end of turn. Apparently, what is it? Brute Strike? Something strike, +3/+0 and first strike, whatever that card was called. Literally sees print every single set, some variant of this. And Scry, is always kind of neat. It's a little underwhelming personally, so I give it a 1.5. If you need a combat trick and this is what you got, it's what you got. So, play it if you have to, but not very exciting. This last card is actually pretty goofy. This is Tin Street Dodger. A single red mana gets you a Goblin Rogue at uncommon with haste. It's a 1/1, and you can pay 1 red to make it be unblockable except by creatures with Defender. This card is so silly. Again, this is a fantastic spectacle enabler here, which is, I think, of what this card wants to be. None of the creatures with Defender have power, as far as I can remember. I don't think any of them do. So they're not going to kill this thing ever, and so just be able to get in every single turn. This is a legitimate way to turn on Spectacle every single turn, or hell, maybe even win a game. But 2.25 for me, it is, like I said, enables in Spectacle. It's a great aggressive red card, so definitely take this highly if you're in that sort of a deck for draft. For sealed pre-release play, I'm a little less excited about it, but definitely worth looking at if you're trying to, again, enable that Spectacle cost for a lot of your other cards. And that's it. All the red cards are done. My voice is, I can tell it's going. I'm sure you can as well at home. So thank you so much for watching tonight, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with the green cards and then the gold artifact and lands. There's going to be a lot of those, so buckle in for that. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I die when I say that on the inside. Let me know what you think about the set down in the comments. I'm always curious to hear what you guys are excited to play at the pre-release. What are you bringing for standard? What cards do you think will have application outside of standard? Let's get the dialogue going as always. And of course, thank you again so much for watching, and we will see you guys again real soon. Have a great night.